And I'm Dean Val here with the Creative Literal Side Show with Professor Bob from Wisconsin. And this show is about educating and guiding folks to make better decisions when traditional education indoctrinations traditional education indoctrinates, we have fun being creative and seeing more from life. Today is Sunday, March 17th. I'm Dean Val, broadcasting from Huntington Beach, California. And Professor Bob is from Wisconsin. He's co-host here. Are you there, Bob?
Yes, Professor Dean Val, I am here. And
okay, how's the weather in Wisconsin today?
It's warmer. We've melted off about 3 of our 6 feet of snow already.
Wow. Yeah, we're not used to that here. Well, glad you can make it. Are you there, Dave?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's much better this time. Thank you. I'm glad we got that worked out. Good. Okay. So, again, I'll start all over here. Today is Sunday, March 17th. I'm Dean Val with Professor Bob from Wisconsin. And our special guest today is another professor, Professor David Lane, philosophy professor and cult buster. And he's also an avid surfer and meditator. Now, interestingly enough, I first encountered David's work indirectly when I was traveling to Latvia. This is a small country in northern Europe, and I was in the path of Eckankar, the spiritual path of Eckankar. And I went over there maybe 3 times to spread the message of their teachings and start up a group there and a center. And I was in there for 40 years in Eckankar. I'm no longer in there. But at that time, it was quite exciting to go over there and to this small country, which was basically Lutheran, but they're more animistic in nature. They love nature, song, and dance. So we only had about 25 people there. But then this Mr. David Lane came out with this book, The Making of a Spiritual Movement, The Untold Story of Paul Twitchell and Eckankar. And what happened was like 3/4 of the people quit Eckankar because of what was in the book, what he exposed. So here we are now, and I wondered. So we have Mr. David Lane, Professor Lane, on with us today, and I wondered how you see this, or how you see all this, how people have been influenced by what you've written, and how is that for you?
Well, that's a good question. It all happened back in 1977, when I was at Cal State Northridge. I'd written this term paper on Eckankar, and a classmate of mine was a member of Eckankar. And Eckankar got wind of my term paper, and they tried to sue me for $2.5 million. And then they tried to sue my classmate, who was actually an Eckist. He really was devoted to it. And they eventually did sue him for about $1 million. They also sued a professor that he gave a copy of his term paper to. So I knew then that something was up. Why was Eckankar so paranoid? Because I had sent them a copy of the paper, and I didn't expect for them to turn around and sue me. I was only like 20 or 21 at the time. So then for the next year, I did a lot more research, and we kind of formalized that making of a spiritual movement back in 1978. I think that's what it was. And then at that stage, what happened is a spiritual counterfeits project to the fundamentalist Christian group up in Berkeley. They flew down and interviewed me, and they wanted to use excerpts of that term paper into their magazine. And I didn't agree with their, theology, but what they did is they published a magazine, 40,000 copies or so, and they sent it to every Eckankar center around the world. At that stage of the game, I got hundreds, maybe thousands of letters from Eckists who were really upset that Eckankar, or Paul Twitchell specifically, had kind of covered up his past. I found out that he had been married before. Nobody knew that. I talked to his first wife. He had plagiarized a lot of stuff, especially in the far country. And so from that stage on, for the last, it's been 40 years, I've been getting letters and, interviews over the course of time, because people get upset because they want to know the genuine history of the group, not the stuff that he made up.
Okay, I'm going to let, we have a lot of listeners here. I'm going to let people chime in and ask questions and comment. We have a lot of, I don't think we have any ECUS listening that I know of, but maybe we do, but we have a lot of former group members, and maybe they'd like to ask you some questions. So go ahead, audience.
Hello, this is Claudia in Texas. I was wondering, did you ever meet Mr. Twitchell? I'm a former ECUS, and I was curious.
Right. No, I never met Paul Twitchell, because when I wrote the paper, he had been dead. He died in 1971. But I did get a chance many years later to meet Darwin Gross, but I never met Paul Twitchell. Although he is a fascinating character.
Yes, and now he's on the other side, so to speak. Did you ever join Eckankar, or were you a member, or just an observer?
No, I was never a member. What it was is that at Cal State Northridge, we had to do a term paper on a religious movement, and I was only 20 or 21 at the time and interested in Sat Mad or Radhaswamy, so I knew some background, and I had read Paul Twitchell's Tiger's Fang, which I really enjoyed, and so I think that was my motivation. But no, I was never a member of Eckankar.
Well, I think you did great work, and thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
David, you according to the reports here on your website, you meditate. It's one of the primary things you do 2 to 4 hours a day. So what's the idea behind that? Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I really, really love meditating, and meditation is a wonderful thing. And what I do is, I was initiated by a guru named, you probably know, of Charan Singh of Radhaswamy. He died in 1990, but back in the late 70s, I started practicing Shabad Yoga, which is, the idea of trying to still your body as much as possible and listen to an internal sound and then try to follow the light. And I've been doing that, for 45 years. And recently, let's say in the last 4 or 5 years, I've definitely developed much more of an intense practice. So it's about 2 to 4 hours a day, which is really quite sweet. I like it.
Okay, you mentioned it's primarily more for pleasure than for a purpose or an effect.
Well, I mean, it's a good question. I mean, the argument is, most people meditate, at least in these different traditions, that they want to reach a goal, where they want to get enlightened and all sorts of things. But at this stage of the game, I'm 62 years old. My argument is it's just a great privilege to be able to sit still for a couple hours a day. Now, granted, certain things do happen. Some amazing things happen. But as you perhaps know from my writings, I'm somewhat skeptical, and I have this feeling that we should be somewhat skeptical of the mystical journey. Oftentimes people aren't. And so on that score, I try not to buy into much that happens inside. Try to be almost like the Tibetan Book of the Dead, if you remember. They make this argument that you shouldn't be too attracted to what you see, because then you get attached to it.
Yeah, you describe yourself as a mystical agnostic materialist.
Which
is that
means,
right?
Quite frankly, I'm a very confused human being. Look, I've been on this planet for a long time. I got a PhD, a couple MAs, written lots of frickin' books, been around the world, met lots of different gurus and mystics. But the fact of the matter is, I'm just a human being that doesn't know very much. And I think that's kind of been my focus, is to not claim more than what I really do know. We have a very limited brain, very limited in terms of how many thoughts we can remember at any particular point. So in that sense, I'm definitely an agnostic, mystical materialist.
Well, what I think we have in common here with most of the people here are in the new presentation. You probably looked us up a bit, but what we have in common might be, I hear you here quoted as, I love the unknowingness Is that from you? I love the unknowingness.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, so we do too, in a sense. We love the unknown, and we love to explore. We love to take the risk, and it's more about love. Even it's just it's a recognition of this unknowingness, this unknown quality of what we don't know. I mean, we know what we know. That's fine, and that's nothing wrong with that. We can use that as a starting point or anchor or a reference, but there's so much more that we don't know. So most of the people here are take the position of not knowing, and then taking the risk to see and recognize something that they don't know. Then it becomes known, and then they can go on and on and on, and life becomes really an adventure, because it's not boring at all, because you're always taking a risk. You're always in the danger zone, like I see you have been. I mean, you've had death threats, hate mail. I can see you're a risk taker. I mean, you've gone the route of not being in the comfort zone, which is admirable. That you are out there and doing something. So we too are doing. We're doing something. It's not just like we love the unknown, but we're actually contributing to helping others get to that position where they can find that place or that position in this reality of unknowingness. I mean, what the personal mind can't possibly, where the possibility of this cannot even exist for the personal mind. So we start from there, and then so how do you figure it out? So where do you go from there? Well, all these spiritual paths have had their purpose and place, but practices, prayer, worship, meditation, contemplation, spiritual exercises. But then, it's really a matter of just recognizing what is. And I think you mentioned that in some of your work. I don't have it right in front of me, but you did hint at it, that it just is. There's an isness to life, a reality, where for you, it might be just sitting and just being with the isness. I'm not sure how you explained it, but that's a start.
Yeah, what you're saying makes a lot of sense. That's a good way to approach it. You're right.
Most people are trying to figure things out by what they came up with through their past references, and that works to a certain point. But these days of masters, gurus, spiritual paths, religions are becoming somewhat not value in a way, because life wakes up. Yeah, life wakes up too. Life evolves, or life is waking up to itself. So there's a point now where these things are not to negate him, but there's more. There's actually more to see, and that's what we're presenting and sharing here. And if you looked into us at all, we're just sharing our experiences. It's not about a dogma or doctrine or anything like that. We don't have memberships. We don't have followers. It's just a matter of sharing our experiences with others. And in our case right now, just with the way the world is, it's starting with the environment and sharing with people what's going on with the chemtrails and GMO foods and Wi-Fi and 5G and all this that's going on that most people aren't even aware of. So that's where we're starting. So are you working on a book on Scientology? Is that what I heard too?
No. Actually, what it was is there's a Scientology connection. A lot of these groups, Paul Twitchell used to be the press agent for L. Ron Hubbard back in the 50s. And a lot of these groups that have branched out, MSIA, Eckankar, some other paths, they were somewhat connected to Scientology. That's all. I was just talking about the idea that Scientology was like a source for a lot of these different groups to offshoot. That's all. I met the president of Scientology. I made one huge mistake. I was at the London School of Economics back in 1993 giving a lecture, and it was a big conference on new religious movements. And I kind of went off on Scientology a little because, L. Ron Hubbard was not very honest about his biography. He claimed he had like a PhD and all sorts of things, which is not true. And I didn't realize that the president of Scientology was in the audience at the time, and that wasn't very good.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I have not done anything on Scientology. No.
Well, how do you see? I'm just curious. How do you see? Like you talk about the plagiarism idea. I'm going to school right now, and we have this like similarity index we have to go through to turn on our work to make sure we're not copying others. And so, say Julian Johnson, The Path of the Masters, and where did he get his work? I mean, how do you see that in terms of like?
Right. No, that's a great question. The argument is not the sharing of similar ideas, because we all do that, right? There's nothing, as Alfred North Whitehead once said, everything is a footnote to Plato. Plato's thought about almost everything we're thinking about right now. It's not that. It's that what Twitchell did is that he claimed he was getting direct information from Rebbe Zartars and Sudar Singh. Instead, what he was doing was he was taking a copy of Path of the Masters, which he got, by the way, from Dr. Louis Bluth, who eventually became the president of Eckankar, and he copied it word by word. But instead of simply saying, hey, I got this from Johnson, he kind of inspired me, he tries to claim he came up from somebody else. That's why, by the way, Eckankar, under Harold Clint, took out Far Country. It's no longer in print because the plagiarism in that is so heavy and so literal, like word by word by word. Now, other groups have done the same thing. John Roger Hinkins of MSIA kind of plagiarized, not from Path of the Masters, but another guy named Gary Olson. You may have heard of him. He founded a group called Masterpath. Back in the 90s, I found that he was plagiarizing extensively from like Radhaswamy group books, but he was doing it in a much easier way. He was like just photocopying it. He was doing it really lazy and white out stuff. And so my argument is not plagiarism. It's the idea that you're not attributing to the right people, and you're just trying to cover it up to make some kind of mythology that make people believe in certain things that are not necessarily historically true. That's all.
I know Claudia, especially Claudia, works with Rebbe Zartars fairly closely, rather closely. So maybe she has some comments too on this, or anybody else who's worked with Rebbe Zartars or Paul.
Yes, I would just like to say I understand Mr. Lane's viewpoint, and in the sense that, yes, it appeared as if Mr. Twitchell had plagiarized much of the material he presented in his books, but at the same time, one has to give credence to, yes, you do visit with the guides. We call them guides, not masters or gurus or anything like that. But yet you can visit with someone, and I'm going to say named Rebbe Zartars, and that person can present the same information that's in the book. Usually most writers on the planet Earth visit some plane of awareness where they connect with many different personalities presenting the same information. Example is like when one of the scientists who developed the telephone showed up at the patent office 30 minutes before another guy with the same information showed up at the patent office. So yeah, two people can have the same idea at the same time, and one can put it down in a book and claim authorship, but it doesn't mean that he didn't get it from the same place that another person did. That was one of the first thoughts that I had when first reading your book about Twitchell and about other writers. You look at them, they want to present some information either for a monetary purpose or for a beneficial purpose for others on the planet. Everybody has a viewpoint, and it can be similar or completely different. But the point is the information is getting out there for the rest of the people to even take a look at. So, yeah, I think there's a room for opportunity for many people to present information, and yet we can still learn. and thank you for helping us learn. That's all.
Okay.